The Earth was silent. Once, its skies had burned with light and life. Cities that reached the clouds, oceans that sang with laughter, and voices that filled the stars. Now only dust and shadows remained. From orbit, the planet looked like a dying ember, cold and gray, surrounded by the broken remains of satellites that once carried humanity's dreams. The war had ended years ago, but its scars still hung heavy in the void. The alien coalition had come in waves, endless and merciless, until no signal, no cry, no ship from Earth answered again. The galaxy believed humanity was finished, erased like a forgotten story written in ash. But silence sometimes hides things that breathe. Beyond Neptune's dark orbit, in the cold edge of the solar system, a small beacon pulsed once every hour. No one had noticed it for decades. It was weak, lost among radiation and static, a relic from the last Terran defense fleet. Yet tonight it flickered differently. The signal changed, shifted in rhythm, as if something ancient had stirred awake. Deep beneath the frozen crust of a hidden moon, long machines hummed for the first time in 100 years. A voice, calm and human, broke the silence of the void. "This is Sentinel Protocol, activation confirmed." Far away, in the ruins of the Martian colony domes, dust storms whispered across shattered glass towers. Beneath them, in forgotten bunkers sealed before the final invasion, systems powered up one by one. Old Terran codes flashed on dead screens, loading messages written by hands long gone. A faint light illuminated the words, "We will return." The machines had been sleeping, waiting for that signal, waiting for someone to remember. Humanity was not gone. It was only waiting. The alien empires that destroyed Earth had long since grown careless. They ruled human worlds with cold efficiency, mining their resources, rewriting their history. They told their young that humans were monsters, a primitive species that could not control its rage, that burned its own world. They taught that lesson as a warning. Never be like the Terrans. But some aliens whispered another story, that humanity's last words were not screams, but silence. A silence that promised revenge. And in that silence, fear grew. The galaxy moved on. Trade fleets crossed between stars. New wars began and ended, and the memory of Earth faded into legend. But legends have a strange power. They don't die. They wait. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, something began to move. It started as a shadow against the stars, a shape too small to be seen, yet vast in presence. It moved with purpose, with direction, cutting through the darkness like a predator returning to its hunting ground. Old Terran transponders reactivated one by one, forming a trail of light across the black. On the bridge of an alien patrol ship near Jupiter's orbit, Captain Vreen adjusted his sensors. Static filled his screen, faint, rhythmic pulses from deep space. He frowned, trying to isolate the pattern. "That's impossible," he muttered. "Those frequencies were banned centuries ago." The officer beside him glanced nervously. "Terran codes?" she asked quietly. Vreen nodded. "It can't be. They're extinct." The signal pulsed again, stronger this time, closer. A low vibration shuddered through the ship's hull. The captain froze as his scanner painted a single object moving fast toward them. The readings made no sense. The mass was enormous, the signature unmistakable. Human. And then, everything went dark. In the silence that followed, a low hum spread through the void, the sound of engines long thought dead. The shadow that emerged from hyperspace was not one ship but many. Their hulls were black as night, marked only by faint, glowing lines that traced the shape of the old Terran insignia. A blue sphere encircled by wings of flame. The ships moved like a storm, slow and deliberate, as if remembering how to breathe again. For the first time in centuries, human metal reflected sunlight once more. The Terran fleet had awakened. Far from there, among the ruins of old Earth, a single drone floated over what was once New York. Beneath layers of ash, it found the broken remains of a statue, the upper half of a woman holding a torch, still standing defiantly against the wind. The drone paused, scanning the symbol, then transmitted a short code, "Status, signal received." The torch still burned, if only as a spark. In a hidden command base carved into the side of an asteroid, deep within uncharted space, men and women gathered around glowing consoles. They wore no flags, no ranks, only the insignia of a phoenix rising from fire. Their leader, Admiral Kale Draven, stood silently at the viewport, watching the distant stars. His eyes reflected both loss and fury. "They thought we were dead," he said quietly. "They thought they could erase us." Behind him, the room buzzed with energy as technicians confirmed reports. The awakening signal had reached every surviving Terran outpost. Across hundreds of systems, humanity was stirring from its long exile. Draven placed a hand on the cold glass, looking toward the distant glimmer of Earth's orbit. "They wanted silence," he whispered. "We'll give them thunder." He turned, his voice hard now, echoing through the command deck. "Prepare the fleet. It's time the galaxy remembers who we are." Outside, in the endless dark, thousands of ships powered up in unison. Blue engines ignited like stars being born. One by one, the vessels turned toward the heart of the galaxy, toward the worlds that had enslaved and mocked the last humans. The quiet hum grew louder, merging into a single sound, the roar of vengeance returning from the void. The silence of Earth was ending, and in that silence, a promise had survived, one forged in fire, buried in dust, but unbroken. Humanity was coming home. Far beyond the wreckage of the old solar system, hidden in the dark folds of the Perseus Arm, lay the world of Erebus 9, a planet no one in the galaxy remembered. To the outside eye, it was nothing more than rock and ice, a dead world orbiting a dying star. But deep beneath its frozen surface, there was life. Humanity had not died. It had simply disappeared into the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return. They called themselves the Terran Remnant, the last survivors of Earth's fall, descendants of soldiers, engineers, and civilians who refused to surrender. For a century, they had lived in silence, building, hiding, and remembering. Inside the command hall of the Remnant's main base, light flickered across metallic walls carved from black stone. Hundreds of officers stood around glowing holographic tables displaying maps of forgotten systems once under human control. Every red mark on the map was a reminder of loss, every name a wound. At the center stood Admiral Kale Draven, tall, calm, his eyes as cold as the vacuum outside. His face carried the quiet strength of a man who had seen too much death and refused to let it be the end. Draven stared at the central display, a small blue dot labeled Earth. The signal they had waited for had finally arrived. For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of machinery was the only sound. Then Draven's voice broke the silence, low and steady. "After 100 years, the signal has awakened the fleet. It's time." Around him, younger officers looked at each other with disbelief. Many of them were born on Erebus, never having seen Earth, never hearing its oceans or feeling its sunlight. To them, Earth was a story, a legend told in whispers, the paradise their ancestors had lost. And yet, as the signal pulsed through the base, something inside them stirred. A connection to something older, deeper, a memory written in their blood. "Are we ready, sir?" one of the commanders asked. Draven's gaze hardened. "No one is ever ready for revenge," he said quietly. "But we are prepared." The Terran Remnant had spent decades stealing technology from their enemies. They had raided forgotten battlefields, hijacked alien transports, and dismantled the weapons of those who once conquered them. From the ruins, they built something greater, ships forged from alien alloys but powered by Terran design. Faster, deadlier, silent. These ships were ghosts, invisible to scanners, untraceable by any known system. The aliens believed humanity was extinct, and so they never looked behind them. That was their mistake. In one of the hangars, a massive warship rested in darkness. Its black armor reflected no light. Its engines pulsed softly like the heartbeat of a giant. On its hull, in white letters, was written a single word: Valiant. It was the first of the new Terran dreadnoughts, a ship designed to strike fear across the stars. Inside, hundreds of crew members worked in silence, each movement practiced, precise, purposeful. They had been raised not just as survivors, but as warriors born from memory. Every man and woman knew the stories of Earth's fall, of the fire that rained from the sky, and of the vow their ancestors made as they fled into the void. "We will return." Draven walked through the hangar, his boots echoing on the steel floor. The crews saluted quietly as he passed. He paused beside the ship, resting a hand on its cold hull. "You'll carry the weight of our history," he whispered. "Do not fail us." As he turned away, his second-in-command, Commander Rhea Solon, approached. She was young but sharp-eyed, one of the few born after the Great Silence. "Sir," she said softly, "the Council is restless. They fear revealing ourselves too soon. If the alien empires discover us before the fleet is ready." Draven nodded slowly. "Fear is natural, but fear won't save us. They left us no choice. If we wait, we'll die in hiding. If we fight, we might die standing." Rhea hesitated. "And if we win?" Draven looked toward the stars beyond the hangar's glass dome. "Then the galaxy will remember what it means to be human." Outside, on the frozen plains of Erebus, a group of children played under a dome of artificial light. They had never seen the real sky, never watched the sunrise over Earth's blue horizon, but they dreamed of it every night. The elders told them stories, of oceans that stretched forever, of birds that flew free, of a planet that loved its people. To them, Earth wasn't just a world. It was a promise, and that promise lived in every heartbeat of the Terran remnant. Deep underground, in the vaults of the old archives, ancient recordings played, messages from humanity's final days. Faces long gone appeared on flickering screens, soldiers and scientists sending words into eternity. "We fought for home," one said. "If you're hearing this, then we are gone, but not defeated. Remember who you are." Those words had become the remnant's creed. For years, they waited in the shadows while the galaxy laughed at the memory of humanity. Alien historians wrote books about the age of human madness, calling it a warning to all. But soon, that warning would become prophecy. The remnant spies whispered of growing corruption among the alien empires. Greed, division, and arrogance. The same weakness that had once doomed humanity now infected its conquerors. And Kale Draven saw his chance. "Begin Operation Dawnfire," he ordered. Across the hidden base, alarms turned blue. Engines came alive, drones lifted from launch bays, and old satellites began transmitting once more. The Terran network, thought destroyed, was reawakening piece by piece. Draven watched as the holographic map brightened with new signals, each one a surviving outpost responding to the call. One near Proxima, another beyond Vega, and one deep inside the Andromeda Gate. The Terrans were scattered, yes, but not broken. And now they were gathering. Commander Rhea stood beside him, eyes wide. "How many ships can we raise?" Draven smiled faintly. "Enough to remind the galaxy that Earth still has teeth." He looked at the stars one last time before turning away. "The day they burned our world," he said, "they thought they ended humanity. They only taught us patience." As the first dreadnoughts rose from Erebus's icy surface, their engines lit the night sky with pale blue fire. The silence of exile was over. Across the dark, a single message echoed through hidden channels, in a language almost forgotten. "From ashes, we rise. From shadows, we strike. For Earth." And in the far reaches of space, those who once called themselves the masters of the galaxy began to feel a chill, a whisper of fear they had not felt in centuries. The humans were coming back. The cold void of space was silent, as always, but silence was no longer peace. It was the quiet before something ancient and unstoppable began to move. Across dozens of hidden star systems, buried under ice, hidden behind moons, and concealed within drifting asteroid fields, the Terran fleet came to life. Ships that had slept for generations hummed with power once again. Massive engines, dormant since the fall of Earth, glowed blue as they awakened. A century of waiting had come to an end. On Erebus 9, the underground hangars trembled as the first wave of ships rose through shafts cut deep into the ice. They emerged into the starless void like ghosts from another age, sleek, black vessels shaped for speed and fury. Each hull bore the old Terran emblem, a blue circle surrounded by wings of fire. Some were battlecruisers built for destruction, others carriers capable of releasing entire wings of fighters. Above them all, like a mountain of steel and vengeance, loomed the flagship, TFS Valiant, the pride of the Terran remnant. Inside its bridge, Admiral Kale Draven stood at the command deck, watching the stars beyond the reinforced glass. The entire ship shuddered as its systems came online. Lights illuminated the dark control panels, and the hum of energy filled the air. Officers called out reports, engine status, reactor stability, fleet synchronization. For the first time in 100 years, the humans were not hiding. They were preparing to move. Fleet synchronization complete, reported Commander Rhea Solon, standing beside Draven. All ships responding to command uplink. Signal range, entire sector. Draven nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the glowing map before him. Activate stealth lattice, he ordered. We move as shadows. The fleet shimmered, vanishing from most known detection systems. Their presence became nothing more than a faint ripple in the void. But even ripples can be felt by those who listen closely. Far away in the SCIFI Empire, one of the dominant alien powers that once led the war against Earth, a listening station orbiting the planet Charon 5 began picking up faint, rhythmic signals. The technician on duty frowned. It's old code, he said, adjusting his controls. Military encryption, ancient, maybe human. His superior laughed. Human? Don't waste my time with ghost stories. They're long gone. But the signal kept repeating, low, steady, and patient, like a heartbeat in the dark. Back in Erebus Command, Kale Draven listened to the same pulse through his headset, a coded synchronization wave bouncing through the old Terran relays scattered across the galaxy. Each pulse awakened more hidden bases, more silent ships waiting for the call. Across forgotten worlds, human bunkers came alive. On Nero Station, miners dropped their tools as alarms lit the tunnels. On Titan's shadow, an entire orbital factory, thought to be dead for decades, ignited with light. The awakening had spread beyond Erebus now. The Terran remnant had become something much larger. Draven turned to his officers. Begin fleet formation protocol, he said. Let the galaxy see what it buried. The ships formed ranks with precision no machine could match. It was human coordination, instinctive, emotional, powerful. Across the void, the fleet stretched for miles, each vessel aligned like part of a great blade waiting to strike. Rhea watched the view from the bridge, eyes wide with awe. Sir, I never imagined it would be this large, she whispered. Draven allowed himself a small smile. This is only a fraction, he said. There are others, fleets we haven't even contacted yet. They'll come when they see our signal. Signal, sir? She asked. Draven looked at the glowing Terran emblem projected above the command console. The one they will never forget. He turned to his communication officer. Broadcast it. A pulse of blue light shot from the Valiant, spreading across space like a wave. It wasn't a message of words, it was a symbol. The Terran insignia, once feared across the stars, now flashed across abandoned satellites, drifting stations, and ancient transmitters. For a few short minutes, across several sectors of the galaxy, the old emblem of humanity appeared. A burning world with wings of fire, before vanishing into static. The aliens didn't understand it. They didn't know where it came from. But those who remembered the human war felt something deep and cold: fear. On the capital world of the SCIFI Empire, military officials scrambled to trace the transmission. It originated from uncharted space, an officer said, panic in his voice. Coordinates match the old human exile zones. The High Chancellor hissed. Impossible. Those systems are dead. Then explain this, the officer said, turning the screen toward him. The Terran emblem glowing, bright and alive. Back aboard the Valiant, Draven watched the chaos unfold through intercepted communications. His intelligence officers smiled as alien networks flooded with confusion and disbelief. Let them wonder, Draven said. Let them remember. In the engineering decks below, Hundreds of technicians worked tirelessly. Energy cores roared, weapon systems charged, and shield harmonics came online. The air smelled of ozone and sweat, the scent of war returning. Every worker knew what this meant. They weren't preparing for defense. They were preparing for revenge. "Sir," Rhea said quietly, "we've awakened the fleet. What's next?" Draven looked at her, his face calm but his voice heavy. "Next," he said, "we remind them what happens when they underestimate humanity." He stepped closer to the viewport, the stars reflecting in his eyes. "We are not ghosts," he whispered. "We are the storm they thought they had survived." Outside, the vast formation of Terran ships adjusted course toward the nearest alien stronghold, a system once called Varela Prime, where human slaves still toiled under alien rule. It would be the first test of the reborn fleet. As the engines flared to full power, the void trembled. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The Terran fleet, silent for a century, was now awake, and it was hungry for justice. Somewhere in the galaxy, an old alien soldier, one of the few survivors from the war against Earth, watched the symbol flicker on his screen. His scales turned pale as memories flooded back. Human ships breaking through impossible defenses, human soldiers fighting to their last breath. He whispered softly to himself, "No, it can't be. Not them. Not again." But deep inside, he already knew the truth. Humanity had returned. And this time, they would not ask for peace. The galaxy slept in false peace. Trade ships crossed the stars, alien fleets patrolled their borders, and no one imagined that the ghosts of humanity were preparing to rise. But on the edge of the ZYCAR Empire, in a system once known to humans as Varela Prime, that illusion was about to end. Varela had once been a Terran colony, a beautiful green world where oceans shimmered and cities stood proud under twin suns. Now it was a place of chains. The alien masters had turned it into a labor world, forcing the surviving humans to mine the crust for rare metals. Generations of Terran slaves lived under the red skies, broken and forgotten, their language and history erased. They were told that Earth had died long ago, that their kind were abandoned relics of a violent species. And so, the people of Varela worked in silence, too afraid to dream. But that night, as the twin suns sank below the horizon, strange lights appeared in the sky. At first, the workers thought it was another meteor shower, the heavens weeping fire. Then the ground trembled. A thunder rolled across the sky unlike anything they had heard before. The overseer towers lit up with warning beacons as the alien guards shouted in panic. Something enormous was entering orbit. Above the planet, the void came alive. From the darkness of space, the Terran fleet emerged like a storm breaking through clouds. Hundreds of ships slid from stealth, their black hulls gleaming faintly in the reflected light of the suns. Massive engines burned blue and bright, casting fire across the sky. At their center flew the flagship, TFS Valiant, leading the formation like a spear of vengeance. Inside its bridge, Admiral Kale Draven watched silently as the planet filled the main viewport. The image of the once human world burned in his chest. "They made our people slaves," he said softly. "That ends tonight." Commander Rhea Solon stood beside him, her hands trembling slightly. "The alien patrol fleets are forming defensive lines," she reported. "They're not ready, but they're trying." Draven nodded. "They should be afraid." He turned toward his communications officer. "Send the message." Across the system, every alien frequency was suddenly flooded by a voice, deep, calm, human. "This is Admiral Kale Draven of the Terran fleet. You took our worlds. You enslaved our people. You thought humanity was dead. You were wrong." Silence followed. And then the first Terran warship opened fire. Blue beams of plasma tore through space, slicing into the alien defense grid like lightning. The ZYCAR ships, sleek and golden, scrambled to form a counterattack, but they were too slow. The Valiant's forward cannons released a single blast that ripped an entire carrier in half. The explosion lit the night side of Varela like a sunrise. On the planet's surface, the slaves stopped working. They stared upward as the skies turned blue with fire. For the first time in generations, they heard a sound they thought they would never hear again. The voice of human engines, roaring across the heavens. A young worker named Terran stood among the crowd, his chains still hanging from his wrists. His father had once told him stories about Earth, about the great Terran fleets that ruled the stars. Terran never believed them until now. "It's them," he whispered, his eyes wide. "It's us." In orbit, the alien fleet commander, General Vreek, shouted orders across his bridge. "Focus all batteries on the central ship. Bring them down before they reach the planet." But every maneuver failed. The Terrans moved with impossible precision. No hesitation, no confusion, only purpose. Their ships fought like extensions of one mind, guided by both logic and fury. "Sir," one of Vreek's officers cried, "they're broadcasting something again." Vreek turned to the screen expecting threats. But instead, a message appeared. The old Terran emblem burning bright. Below it, 3 words in human script. "For Earth. Always." The next second, the Valiant's bombardment shattered Vreek's fleet. One by one, alien ships exploded, breaking apart under the relentless storm of Terran fire. The void filled with burning debris, and the Terran formation advanced without slowing. Draven stood at the command deck, his expression hard but calm. "Target the main control towers on the planet," he ordered. "No civilian zones. Free the humans." Rhea nodded and relayed the command. Precision strikes followed. Beams of light rained from orbit, slicing through the alien strongholds but leaving the slave cities untouched. The people below watched as their prison walls turned to molten glass. The overseers fled, their ships destroyed before they could even reach orbit. For the first time in a century, the humans of Varela looked up at a sky that belonged to them again. When the last alien resistance collapsed, the Valiant descended through the atmosphere, flames trailing behind it as it pierced the clouds. Massive hatches opened along its hull, releasing dropships carrying Terran soldiers, armored figures with the Phoenix emblem on their shoulders. They landed among the stunned crowd, their boots striking the soil of a human world reclaimed. Terran watched as one of the soldiers removed her helmet, a young woman with cold eyes and a faint smile. She extended her hand toward him. "You're free now," she said simply. Terran stared, too shocked to speak. Around him, people began to cry and shout, some kneeling, some cheering. The old songs of Earth, passed down in whispers, rose again under the open sky. From orbit, Draven watched the feed from the ground. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, quietly, he whispered, "Welcome home." But victory was never quiet. Across the galaxy, the transmission of the battle spread faster than any fleet could travel. Millions of alien screens flickered to life, replaying the impossible. Human ships tearing through the SCIFI navy, banners of blue and silver rising over a reclaimed world. The name Terran Fleet appeared across military networks that had not spoken it in 100 years. On distant worlds, alien leaders met in panic. "If they've returned," one whispered, "they will not stop here." And they were right. The first strike had begun. Humanity had stepped back into the stars, not as victims, but as conquerors reborn. The galaxy, which once laughed at their destruction, now watched in silence. For the first time in centuries, every species felt the same cold truth. The humans were coming. The news of Varela Prime's liberation spread like wildfire through the galaxy. For generations, the stars had been quiet, safe under the rule of the alien empires. That safety was gone now. Across hundreds of worlds, fear replaced arrogance. The once invincible SCIFI fleets had been destroyed in a single night by a species everyone believed extinct. Every communication channel buzzed with the same name, Terran Fleet. In the dark halls of alien governments, leaders shouted, argued, and panicked. Some refused to believe the truth. "It's a trick," they said. "A rogue faction. It can't be humans." But others knew. The older ones, those who had fought the war a century ago, felt the same chill run through their veins. They remembered the way humans fought. Not for conquest, not for power, but for survival, for vengeance, and for something far deeper, the right to exist. Across the recovered Terran bases, the remnant fleet grew stronger. Every day, more signals came in from hidden colonies. Old human warships, forgotten stations, long-sleeping AIs, all reawakening, all answering the same call. Humanity was gathering again, from the ashes of the past. Inside the command bridge of the TFS Valiant, Admiral Cale Draven stood before a glowing star map that stretched across the galaxy. Red marks represented enemy strongholds. Blue dots marked the liberated systems. Slowly, painfully, the blue began to spread. 2 more colonies freed in the Epsilon sector, reported Commander Rhea Solon, standing beside him. Our fleets are holding, but casualties are rising. Draven's jaw tightened. He knew victory always had a price. The humans were fighting on too many fronts, outnumbered, outgunned, yet still winning through sheer will. How many ships have we lost? He asked quietly. 37 confirmed, Rhea replied, and more damaged beyond repair. But morale remains high. They believe in you, sir. Draven turned to face the viewport, watching the distant lights of space. They shouldn't believe in me, he said softly. They should believe in themselves. We fight not because we're strong, but because we remember. He thought of Earth, the lost home they were fighting to avenge. Every time a Terran ship fell, he imagined another piece of that blue world fading from memory. But then he remembered the faces on Varela Prime, the people who looked up and saw freedom for the first time. That image burned away all doubt. Signal all fleets, he said at last. We move to the next sector. The next battle came quickly. The ZYCAR Empire, desperate to regain control, assembled an armada of over 1,000 ships, war cruisers, dreadnoughts, and mercenary fleets. They formed a defensive wall near the twin suns of Varan system, hoping to stop the Terrans' advance. The alien commanders laughed at the odds. 1 human fleet against the largest armada in the sector. But they had forgotten who they were fighting. When the Terran fleet arrived, it came like a storm. Thousands of human ships emerged from the void, sleek, silent, and glowing with blue light. The sight alone silenced the enemy channels. The Valiant led the charge, its engines roaring as it accelerated into the heart of the enemy line. Fire on my mark, Draven ordered, his voice calm and steady. For every world they burned. The fleet responded as one. Fire! The stars lit up. Dozens of alien ships exploded instantly under the first volley. Human missiles streaked across the void, their trails painting the blackness with lines of fire. Enemy ships returned fire, their plasma cannons filling space with deadly color. The battle became chaos, a storm of light and death. Inside the Valiant, alarms blared as shockwaves rocked the hull. Rhea gripped the console. Shields at 70%. They're focusing all fire on us. Draven didn't flinch. Good. Let them. They'll never break us. He ordered the Falcon Wing, a squadron of fast Terran interceptors, to flank the enemy's formation. The small ships darted between enemy cruisers like lightning, planting magnetic charges that detonated seconds later. Massive explosions ripped through the alien fleet center, tearing it apart. The alien commander of the ZYCAR flagship screamed in disbelief. How are they doing this? Their technology is inferior. A technician trembled. It's not their machines, sir. It's their coordination. They move like one mind. And he was right. Humans had something the others didn't, unity born from pain. Every pilot, every crew member fought with purpose. They weren't soldiers following orders. They were survivors defending the memory of their dead world. Hours passed. The battle raged from orbit down to the surface of Varan's moons. Flames reflected off the ice plains as debris rained like meteors. By the time the last alien cruiser exploded, the space around the suns was a field of wreckage, burning fragments of a fallen empire. When the dust settled, the human fleet drifted in silence, battered but victorious. Thousands had died, but the line had held. Humanity had won again. Back aboard the Valiant, the bridge was quiet. Smoke filled the air, systems flickered, but the crew still stood at their posts. Rhea wiped blood from her forehead and turned to Draven. "We did it," she said weakly. Draven nodded, his voice low. "Yes, but this is only the beginning." He looked out at the stars, his reflection faint in the glass. "Every battle we win will wake more worlds. Every victory will remind them who we are. And every death will cost us, until there's no turning back." Rhea stared at him. "Do you ever wonder if revenge is worth it?" Draven was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "It's not revenge. It's balance. They broke the galaxy when they destroyed us. Now we're fixing it." Across the galaxy, other human fleets were rising. The Eclipse Armada, the Shadow Line, the Phoenix Command, all names whispered by the descendants of survivors. They were uniting under one banner, the Terran Ascendancy. To some, they were liberators. To others, they were monsters returned from extinction. On alien worlds, civilians watched the skies in terror, remembering old stories of human fury. On human slave worlds, hope burned like fire. The galaxy was changing again, and this time humanity was the storm. As the fleet repaired and regrouped, Admiral Draven stood before his crew. "This is not the end," he said. "This is the echo of every cry they ignored. This is the sound of every voice they tried to silence. We fight not because we can win, but because we cannot forget." The crew rose in silence, saluting. Outside, the debris of battle drifted among the stars, silent witnesses to a rebirth written in flame. The galaxy thought it had seen war before. It hadn't, because war had a name again: humanity. The galaxy was burning. In every corner of known space, the flags of the alien empires fell one by one. Systems that had once mocked humanity now whispered its name in fear. The Terran fleet had become more than an army. It was a storm of vengeance sweeping through the stars. Yet even as victories piled up, one enemy still remained: the SCIFI High Dominion, the empire that had destroyed Earth. Their capital world, Vraxis Prime, stood at the heart of the galaxy. A fortress world surrounded by rings of defense fleets, energy barriers, and massive orbital cannons. For centuries, it had been untouchable. But now, the Terran Armada had arrived at its gates. Admiral Kale Draven stood at the command bridge of the TFS Valiant, watching the enemy world spin slowly in the dark. The planet glowed like a silver wound, covered in defense grids and weapon arrays. He had waited his whole life for this moment. The ghosts of billions stood behind him, the people of Earth, the fallen soldiers, the forgotten generations. "Status report," he said calmly. Commander Rhea Solan's voice was steady but tense. "All fleets in position, sir. 70,000 Terran ships. The SCIFI have twice our numbers, maybe more. But every fleet commander reports ready." Draven nodded slowly. "Then we make history today." He looked over his crew. Exhausted faces, eyes full of determination. "They thought humanity could be erased," he said quietly. "They were wrong. Today we remind the galaxy why they feared us." He paused, then added, "All ships, prepare for final engagement." The order echoed across every human ship. Engines roared to life, lighting the void with blue fire. Across the fleet, thousands of captains gave the same command: for Earth. When the battle began, it was like the universe itself split apart. The SCIFI unleashed everything they had: energy beams, plasma storms, kinetic strikes that could shatter moons. The void turned white with the brightness of destruction. But the humans didn't retreat. They cut through the storm like blades of light, formations shifting with perfect precision. The Valiant led from the front. Draven's voice was calm amidst the chaos. "Target the main defense ring. Overload their reactor grids." Rhea worked quickly. "Done. Weapons ready." "Then let's show them fire," Draven said. The Terran cannons roared. Blue-white beams tore through the darkness, striking the SCIFI's outer ring. Explosions rippled across the massive defense platforms, turning metal into dust. Human missiles followed, swarms of guided fire that streaked across the void, finding every weakness. The SCIFI fought back fiercely. Alien dreadnoughts closed in, surrounding the Valiant. Dozens of enemy ships fired at once. Shields flared. The Valiant shuddered under the impact. "Shields down to 40%, shouted Rhea. "Hold the line," Draven said quietly. "We've come too far to break now." He opened a fleet channel. "This is Admiral Draven. To every human ship, remember Earth. Remember the silence they gave us. Today, we answer it." His words ignited something deep within every Terran. Across the stars, human captains repeated his call. "For Earth! For the fallen!" Hours passed. The battle stretched into madness. Entire fleets vanished in the storm of energy and debris. Human ships collided, exploded, or burned out their reactors, but none withdrew. The SCIFI began to falter under the relentless assault. Then came the moment Draven had been waiting for. "Their shield network is collapsing," Rhea reported. "One push, and the capital is open." "Then give it everything," Draven said. "All power to forward guns. Prepare the Firestorm protocol." The Firestorm was a last resort weapon, a human creation forged from desperation. A massive plasma wave designed to burn everything within its reach. Once fired, it could not be stopped. Draven looked around the bridge, at the faces of his crew. "You all know what this means," he said. "Once we fire, we may not come back. If anyone wishes to leave," Rhea interrupted softly. "We all stay, sir, till the end." A faint smile touched Draven's lips. "Then let's make it count." As the SCIFI flagship loomed ahead, a monstrous ship the size of a city, Draven stood tall. He could almost see the alien overlord on the other side, watching him, perhaps realizing too late what humanity truly was. "Target locked," Rhea said. "Fire," Draven whispered. The Valiant unleashed the Firestorm. A beam of white fire erupted from the Terran flagship, stretching across the void like a sun being born. It hit the SCIFI flagship and pierced straight through it. Then the wave expanded, a blinding eruption that consumed the entire defense grid. Planets shook, ships vanished, and even space seemed to tremble. When the light faded, Vraxis Prime's orbital fleets were gone. The once mighty capital world hung silent, broken, surrounded by the glowing wreckage of its own defenders. The Valiant drifted among the debris, systems failing, fires burning across its hull. But it was still there, and so was humanity. Hours later, on the scorched surface of Vraxis Prime, the survivors of the Terran fleet stood among the ruins of the alien capital. The SCIFI overlord lay defeated, his empire in ashes. Draven looked up at the red sky and whispered, "For Earth." Beside him, Rhea placed a small silver flag, the last relic from their home, into the alien soil. The flag's symbol, a blue Earth surrounded by stars, fluttered weakly in the wind. "This is where it ends," Rhea said quietly. Draven shook his head. "No, this is where it begins." He turned to his soldiers, his voice steady. "We were ghosts. We were forgotten. But now the stars remember our name. We are humanity, and we are back." As the Terran fleet regrouped, signals from across the galaxy began to flood in. Colonies cheering, resistance cells rising. Even alien worlds that had suffered under SCIFI rule reached out, seeking alliance. The Firestorm had done more than destroy an empire, it had awakened a galaxy. Draven stood on the bridge of his scarred ship one last time, watching the stars drift by. "We've lost much," he said softly, "but we've given the future a voice." Rhea smiled faintly. "What now, Admiral?" He turned toward her, his eyes reflecting the endless night beyond the window. "Now," he said, "now we rebuild, not as vengeance, as hope." The stars glowed quietly ahead, and for the first time in centuries, the light of humanity burned brighter than ever before. They had been left for dead, but they returned with fire and fury. End of story. They left humanity for dead, but the Terran fleet returned with fire and fury.